This is a Film Stories original podcast.
We made this.
Hi, I'm Kristen Cloak, and you are listening to the X-Cast.
Back to the X-Cast. The truth is in here. I'm your host, Zach Moore, and I'm currently in the backseat of a car going 75 miles an hour down the highway west. Our driver tonight is Mr. Brandon Shea-Mutala. What's up, Brandon?
Oh, not too much. I'm just having a good time here. I got to stop for gas. But Moore, what is that? Like a Jewish name?
Hey, man, you can't help who you're born into, right?
Right on, Moore.
Bizarre.
Right on. I'm just going to call you Moore for the rest of the episode. Moore.
It's Mr. Moore.
Oh, Mr.
To you,
Moore.
Brandon.
Sorry, Mr. Moore.
It's Mr. Moore. I love all the name play in this episode, but anyway.
When you hear the name Crump, do you not think of Krampus?
I guess.
I
thought it was spelled with a K, but it's actually spelled with a C.
I assumed it was a K.
Crump. Well, when they have the super of the Crump residence, it starts with a C. But anyway, we're getting into it here. Drive. All right, starring Bryan Cranston before he was famous, right? Bryan Cranston, man, that's this episode's claim to fame. It's kind of the audition for Breaking Bad because it's, of course, written by Vince Gilligan. We'll get into that. And Bryan Cranston is the guest star. So did you know of Bryan Cranston before Breaking Bad, Brendan?
I would have to say no, because while I had seen this episode many, many, many times, it had been a long time before I had seen very much X-Files, and I caught Breaking Bad right in between season 6 part 1 and season 6 part 2 is when I jumped on the train. And so I plowed through Breaking Bad all the way through, and I believe, if I remember correctly, the 20th anniversary of the X-Files was just coming up. Maybe it was the 25th, I'm not sure. And I decided to pick, 5 of my favorite episodes and watch them in a day, and I picked Drive. And I'm like, holy smokes, that's Bryan Cranston. So I did not realize that he was even in the episode when I finally went back to it.
I knew him best as the dad from Malcolm in the Middle.
Right.
Which was a comedy on Fox. Okay. So he's just like, hey, I'm a goofy dad. Da, 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 right? And just the guy has range because you never believe it. When Vince Gilligan, obviously he created Breaking Bad and AMC, he wanted Bryan Cranston to be Walter White on the show, and the AMC people were like, I don't know, he was that goofy dad over on Malcolm in the Middle, and then he showed them this episode. They're like, okay, we believe you. We think he can do it. He's been in a lot of things over the years. He did some stuff on Power Rangers back in the day in the early 90s. He did an episode of The Flash, the original Flash TV show back in 1990. So he's just one of those hardworking guys that really hit it big finally in the 2000s, and now I think he's one of those actors everybody wants to cast and everything. Mm-hmm. Too. It's like, let's get Bryan Cranston for that. Mm-hmm. Right? Did you see the Godzilla film from 2014?
No, I didn't. Is he in that?
Yeah, he is in that.
He was.
I'll leave it there.
He was in an episode of that Electric Dreams on Prime.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, and that was a pretty good episode.
Haven't checked that out.
Oh, you should. It's good.
This guy, he's nominated for Academy Award for Trumbo. I don't know what other nominations he's gotten. Probably Emmys and Golden Globe nominations, I would assume.
Dumbo.
Probably once. Trumbo.
Oh, they said Dumbo.
So another Breaking Bad connection, though, Brandon. Did this episode remind you of F. Emasculata at all?
Not really, but I guess you could say that it kind of does now that I think about it. I mean, we got the exploding things and viruses and whatnot. Sure, I guess so.
Pus blowing up on environmental suits.
Which F. Emasculata is another one of my favorite episodes.
I know. And Dean Norris, who was in Breaking Bad, was in that episode as well. So this is where my mind is going watching this episode. But little behind-the-scenes inspiration. The extreme low frequencies they talk about in this episode, that was based on the idea that Project HARP and Project ELF were real-life projects, and they were Army experiments dealing with electromagnetic radiation in the atmosphere, and so people are like, "What are they doing up there? What's the government really messing with?" Right, and that's what classic X-Files is all about. They kind of rip from the headlines, so to speak, but then put their own spin on it. So I thought that was interesting and had kind of some real world applications there.
I love when they do that. Like, those are some of the best X-Files episodes, when they take something that's based on reality and make it an X-File. They take it and they multiply it by X.
By X, you say?
See what I did there?
Mulder has a line in the episode like, "I thought I saw that movie," where he's like, "You can't stop, you got to keep moving."
Yeah.
And although Speed, which came out in 1994, the Keanu Reeves, Sandra Bullock movie about the bus that can't slow down, for those of you who are unfamiliar, is an inspiration. One of the other influences on this episode was an episode of Homicide: Life on the Street, episode called Subway. It's from the 6th season of Homicide: Life on the Street, and that is one of Vince Gilligan's favorite shows. So I haven't seen it. I am familiar with it, being part of the NBC crime, law and order, drama television universe they have over there from the early 90s. So that was another inspiration for the show.
Mm-hmm.
And Vince Gilligan putting his own stamp on things. He was a big fan of the country western music star Junior Brown. So that's why he appeared in this episode. He is the guy, the farmer at the very beginning that Mulder and Scully go visit. And Gilligan flew him out there at his own expense to film his scenes. He wanted him in the show so badly.
Wow.
And hey, this is season 6 now, Brandon. So we're in California. They moved the show down south of the border.
Looks a little different.
Do you miss Canada?
X-Files, okay, so here's the thing. So X-Files looks great filmed around British Columbia because of its mood, and it's always raining and stuff like this. But there are many times when it looks great being filmed down in the States there, down in California, and this is definitely one of the episodes that benefits from having the wide open highways, not the constraints of mountain highways, not the rain, not the trees. I think this episode really shines by being filmed here in the States. What do you think?
Oh yeah, there's a definite different vibe between the first 5 seasons of the X-Files and what came after. But for this particular story, it works because, they're supposed to be on the West Coast, on these wide open American highways and things like that. So I think for this particular story it worked. For others it doesn't. It's probably a wash. A lot of people are like, it was never the same when it left Canada. And, to some extent that is true.
Yeah.
Canadian shows have a lot of just a DNA to them. So many shows are still shot there.
Yeah.
The locations, the actors, the weather, right? But David Duchovny, that was a big part of him coming back and signing on for more years, was he wanted to have the show done in L.A. That's where all the big actors live, and that's why it was in L.A. for the last couple of years.
And they started to get some serious actors joining the show for guest spots after that too, hey?
Like Bryan Cranston, am I right?
Like Bruce Reynolds.
Bruce Reynolds.
Yeah.
Burt Reynolds.
Or Burt Reynolds, oh my goodness. I'm from Canada. I don't know all these American actors.
So Brandon, Drive got an 8.6 out of 10
That's
on IMDb.
That's way too low.
What would you give it out of 10?
10. This is my favorite.
10 out of 10.
This is my favorite episode of the X-Files, man.
This is your favorite episode of the X-Files?
100% my favorite episode of the X-Files. I love this episode more than you can possibly know. This is it.
I did not know that. I know you liked it a lot. I didn't realize it was your favorite.
Yes, it's not Shapes. Yeah, this episode, I don't know. I just love this. Like, we'll get into discussion of this, but in my opinion, this is a perfect episode of the X-Files, and this sums up everything that the X-Files does right, and it does it with bells on in this episode. It's wonderful. I just love this episode so much.
So 10 out of 10 for you.
Yeah.
I'm going to go solid 9 out of 10.
9 out of 10.
I really do like
good.
this episode because it knows exactly what it is. There are no some weird subplots or anything like that. And it's tough for these episodes where the X-Files are closed, right? But they still find a way to do an X-File. And that's always an interesting stretch of the show that happens a few times throughout the course of the series.
Yep.
And here we are in the stretch again. We're coming back from, this is the first, I guess, normal episode, right? Since the season premiere, since the movie, Fight the Future. So this is a unique time in the show. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. And obviously we'll get into it here. But yeah, high marks from us. And yeah, I agree. IMDb, 8.6, below both of our scores.
Yeah.
So
That's
10 out of 10 for
standard.
you, 9 out of 10 for me. But let's get into it. You know what, Brandon? Let's drive.
Let's drive. Drop it into low gear and let's go.
Drive is the second episode of the X-Files 6th season. It's the 119th episode overall. It aired on November 15th, 1998. Was written by Vince Gilligan and directed by Rob Bowman. So a couple of big X-Files names there, are we right?
Some heavy hitters.
So the episode starts out with a breaking news report about a car chase. And I thought this was a pretty creative angle to things. And I wonder how many people this tricked back in the day thinking this was actually breaking news.
It tricked me. I watched this live and I was upset that they were postponing my X-Files.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I definitely watched this live, so good start. Especially because it said Fox.
Right, that's the genius of it. They're like, oh, if you have it on a Fox station, you're watching Fox. Like, if you're not really paying attention to, like, if you lived in a town where Fox was 26, you're like, well, why is it Fox 11? But you're probably not thinking that because it really is played like a real car chase. Mm-hmm. So, very clever. And we eventually, we have the helicopter coverage and like every car chase you've ever seen in real life. That's why it's so effective. And we're going down this road and like there seems to be a hostage in the back of a car. And if you don't know what's going on, when someone's in the back of a car and someone's driving, that's where your mind goes, and then we do cut into the car and we see Bryan Cranston, Mr. Crump.
Mr. Crump.
As we'll refer to him as. Not just Crump, Mr. Crump. And he is driving along, and you can intuitively think it's his wife, in the back seat. Seems right under distress. That's the conclusion I came to, and that came to be the truth.
Yeah, right away, absolutely. The only thing I think with the opening of this episode is I kind of wish that they had made the whole teaser like from the perspective of the helicopter. Mm-hmm. And not cut into the car for the teaser at all. I think that would have made the episode just a little bit more powerful and a little bit more shocking at the time. But I guess they probably did that because they didn't want people turning away and changing the channel. What do you think?
Right. Well, also, you get some insight into what's going on because once you see Bryan Cranston and his wife, it's like she's in distress. Something's wrong with her. You get the shots of him trying to call out to her as he's being arrested. So you get that inside look into what's really going on here. Had you stayed with the news helicopters the whole time, you never would have gotten that insight and just would have assumed he was. You have no idea what's going on. You have no context for anything,
right? But
so it would have been a cool gimmick. But when do you show that?
You don't need to show it, I think, because as you're going through, then all of a sudden this stuff starts happening with Crump himself, right throughout the episode. Then you realize what's going on. But the X-File is like the shot of the helicopter with the brain blowing up, right? And like right there is such a shocking moment. And you see him you see her away from Crump. Like, so right there, there's something more to the story.
And then, you see Mulder and Scully seeing this news report later.
Right.
And they say it was not gunfire. And by the way, having worked in television and knowing how television works, they would never, ever, ever re-air that if someone's head exploded. Like, if it's live, you can't help it. Right. Even then, most stations are on like a 7-second delay. I understand live events like that. Maybe things aren't set up right. We've had a few mistakes like that in my time on television. Not myself personally, but the television station I worked at. But nothing to this extreme. And they certainly wouldn't re-show it.
Right.
In a later news report. But yeah, you see her head blow up like, whoa! And also, hey, this is 1998, right? Broadcast TV. I know it's prime time, but still, that's pretty extreme. And showing it through a news helicopter camera made it a lot more acceptable than perhaps showing it live, as if it was a regularly filmed scene of the X-Files.
See, the difference, the differentiation for it being like too far and whatnot is the fact that you don't see anything. She lays down and you see the blood on the window, right? Mm-hmm. So like it leaves it to your imagination. And I mean, like that's one of the brilliances of television at this time is they're trying to push the limits in certain ways, yet they got to maintain certain standards, and that's one of the ways that they did it. I think the shot works wonderful. I think it's creepy, shows you nothing, and leaves everything open to the imagination.
I remember one of the X-Files that did get me with these unique openings was X-Cops, where it was cops.
Yes.
And you think you're like, what is this, cops? And then it turns to the X-Files. So I like it when they try these unique openings. And you're right. I maybe I'll have to rewatch it and see what I think if they never deviated from the news cameras, what I think of it. But I think you're right. I think they give you enough information as the episode progresses where you wouldn't necessarily have to see that, but it does help you sympathize with Mr. Crump throughout the episode.
Right, because as soon as Mulder and Scully are talking later, they're like, it's his wife that's with him, right? So if they had laid that information later on, the mystery would have been revealed more to the audience, I think. But this teaser, though, like, I love this teaser so much, and still, I don't know how many times I've seen this episode, when that head blows up and the reporters are like, what's going on, man? Like, it still gives me chills, because I think it's just done so well. It's the aspect of being from the point of view of a news camera, and the idea that it could be something live that's happening right now is just, it truly creeps me out every time I watch it. And it's a perfect intro to the show.
Absolutely. Then we go to our main credits, and we come back, and Mulder and Scully are knocking on the door of Junior Brown, the country western singer who Vince Gilligan's a big fan of. I like how they're knocking on the door, and they give them their whole spiel, and he's like, Jehovah's Witnesses? And Mulder's like, no, but we do have a free copy of The Watchtower, which is just, Mulder has a lot of good singers in this one, I think, so...
Yes,
and this is what they have been reduced to do since the X-Files have been closed again. There's a farmer, he ordered a high quantity of what could be used as an explosive device, but it's just for his farm, and so the government sends people to go check up on making sure people are using these chemicals and materials for the proper use and not using them for domestic terrorism, because that's what they're doing.
Sweet beats.
That's what Mulder's and Scully's beat is these days. So
sweet beats. This is a little bit better than Mulder sitting down listening to audio tapes for a long time, hey?
At least he gets to, like, drive around, you know? Him and Scully are together, right? Yeah, I mean, comparing it to other times the X-Files have closed, right? This is not so bad. Like at the beginning of season 2, for example. So, but he's looking around for his sweet beats, whatever the guy says. He's looking for his receipts, and Scully's over there with him, but then he has the television on, and Mulder is seeing the re-airing of what we saw in the teaser of the car chase and the head exploding, as we said. That would not happen. They would not re-show that, but it catches his attention, and they make it a point to say that it was not a bullet, and Mulder, Mulder is he's a master of observation, right? So he can see, like, looks like he was trying to call out to the cops and warn them, and he calls Scully over the TV, and they talk about it, and he wants to go to Nevada and investigate this.
Yeah. Yeah, it works that it's a great way to get them into an X-File, right? It's a believable way, because if something like that was happening, it would be all over the news. Yeah, they wouldn't show the bloodshot over and over again, but it's a way for them to realize that there's something going on, and, hey, let's just sneak over to Nevada while we're here.
Yeah, they're in the neighborhood, so to speak. And, he calls, obviously Mulder calls whoever's in charge there and offers their assistance as FBI agents, and Scully comes out, she's finishing up business in the house and comes out and sees him at the end of this phone call. And he's like, we'd be happy to render our assistance, right? And she's like, assistance with what? Mulder, we're not going to do this. They have this whole back and forth. And he's like, well, Scully, what do you think happened? She's like, well, obviously she was shot regardless of what the police said. I'm like, come on, Scully, come on.
Well, that's what it looks like to me. I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. Maybe there is something more. Maybe it is an X-File. So
then we get to the sheriff's department where they have Mr. Crump now, and this sheriff, Sheriff Van Gelder. All right. First of all, that is his name is referenced from to an original series episode called Dagger of the Mind.
Simon Van Gelder,
played by Morgan Woodward.
Who was in Aubrey.
Who appeared in the episode Aubrey of the X-Files.
Which I did an X-Cast for.
So it's all connected. It really is all connected, everybody.
That was my first X-Cast.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, that was my first X-Cast, was Aubrey.
Very good. You know what the very first X-File was, Brandon? Was the werewolves in shapes. Did
That's
you know
right.
that?
I did, yes.
But the character is Captain Van Gelder. The actor is Michael O'Neill, and I looked this guy up because he looked very familiar to me.
He's been in everything.
He's been in Millennium. He's been in the television version of The Shining. Mm-hmm. He's been in Fringe. Mm-hmm. He's been in Transformers. So he is a hardworking actor with a familiar face. But anyway, I was inspired to go look him up because I'm like, this guy looks familiar, but he looks like a standard sheriff, right? The sheriff characters, the local law enforcement characters, they always interact with Mulder and Scully, right? But these guys are actually pretty cooperative with them, I think.
Yeah, most of the time you get cops and they're like bumping heads and they're like, oh, jurisdiction, and in this one they're like, they realize they're in over their heads and they can use any help they can get.
Yeah, because they know the guy didn't kill his wife, and they know they didn't, so something is going on here. So Scully does an autopsy, and they find the corpse of Mrs. Crump, and it's a typical X-Files disgusting autopsy. It reminded me of Vasculato with the exploding puss in the ear and all that stuff. It's like, so anyway.
Blood all over her chest. See, there too, like, again, you know, I mean, we're doing this in the middle of the COVID crisis, right, where we're talking about this, and I mean, you know, germs and diseases and stuff have always been a fear of mine, and so to be sprayed with that, I always question, like, why aren't they covered more when they're doing autopsies like this?
Right. Well, and, yeah, you mentioned it, we're recording this in the COVID crisis, and just seeing people with hazmat suits, and it's like, oh, man, this is a little too close to home nowadays, right? F. emasculata is more like this, because this is, as we find out, this is not the same kind of disease as something like that.
Right.
But at this point, they don't know. That's why they Scully calls a quarantine, you know, all these things. So it's like, whoa, okay, talk about ripped from the headlines. Ripped from the headlines today.
Yeah, they're all locked up. They got their social distancing going on. Nobody there is going out for groceries.
That's right. But they're stocking up on toilet paper. But Mr. Crump, who was in a jail cell for, you know, presumably, you know, well, speeding and stealing a car, as we find out. Yep. He starts to have the same symptoms that his wife had, because we saw her in the car, like, make it stop. She's banging her head, and then he starts to. You hear a little bit, like they give you just a little bit of taste of what they might be experiencing, like with a ringing in the ear, just the pressure on the skull, as we find out it is, and he starts like screaming for help because, you know, it's happening to him too.
He's got a real bad case of tinnitus.
Yes, exactly. Did you know William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy had tinnitus, Brandon?
I think I have tinnitus. I just found out recently what tinnitus was, and I've always had ringing in my ears. Should get it checked out.
Well, I guess if you think you always have it, it's not really that big a deal. But if you remember life before, that's what the issue is. But when they were filming Arena, the episode with the Gorn, when they were on the outpost of the Gorn destroyed, William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy are running around, they're shooting off explosions, and this is 1967, right? And William Shatner still has it, and Leonard Nimoy had it for the rest of his life. So just the slight ringing in your ear. Anyway, there's some sci-fi trivia for you guys at the next party. But
maybe you should bring some relevant trivia, like X-Files trivia.
So they're taking out Mr. Crump. Mulder wants to question him, right? But you know he's freaking out, so they have to take him out in an ambulance. They're trying to sedate him. Mulder tries to get on the ambulance with him, but they tell him 5's a crowd. It's like, wow, these ENTs with these one-liners are hilarious, right? But it helps Mulder, I guess. It helps set up this whole episode because he has to follow along in a car, and he is following the ambulance the whole time. They end up sedating Crump for like, I don't know, a minute or so. It kind of alleviates his symptoms, and then he notices, you know, the gun on one of the law enforcement officers in the back of the ambulance. And another great instance of, you know what's happening, but they show it to you from a different perspective. Mulder's following in the car, and it's a classic like Michael Myers horror situation, right? the monster wakes up in the back of the ambulance and kills everybody and takes out. Now he doesn't kill everybody, Mr. Crump, right? He just presumably pulls the gun and holds them all hostage and gets out. And then as soon as he gets out of the ambulance, Mulder has pulled up behind them because it has stopped, and he's got a gun pointed at his face from Bryan Cranston. So
we've seen this kind of an image many times in, you know, horror movies and action movies where the ambulance gets pulled over and somebody comes up to the ambulance and there's nobody in it. So it's a little bit of a play on that, done to, you know, it's good that he doesn't kill them because this isn't a bad guy, right? Yeah. This is just somebody who's had something happen to them. It's not his fault. Yeah, and then we cut to Scully and she calls Mulder on a cell phone. Another, Mulder, it's me. I wish I had a counter for it every time Scully says it that way. Like, Mulder, it's me, right? Like, that's probably, I would wager 100 times over the course of the show she calls him on the phone and says that. But she's telling him, all right, we need to get Crump, we need to get him isolated. You can't have
contact with him. She's going on this whole spiel, and I love the way they reveal it because we stay in the autopsy room with her on the phone, and she's like, all right, Mulder, that means you can't talk to him, you can't get anywhere near him. And we cut to Mulder, and he's like, well, that's going to be a bit of a problem, Scully, because he's now being held hostage by Crump, who's in the back seat with a gun on him, and they're driving along the road.
Yeah, it's a good reveal.
That's a great
because
reveal.
We don't see Crump get in the car. Right? He just jumps out of the ambulance, and then we cut to Scully, and then we cut back to Mulder, and he's like in there, and then he takes the phone away from him.
Yeah, I love when he's talking on the phone, and at the end of this, Crump takes it, and then Crump eventually throws the phone out the window because it keeps ringing and it's bothering him, and Mulder just gets mad. He's like, that is so stupid, Crump. That is so stupid. That's how you would react if somebody did that, too, right? But it's great because it isolates them.
Yes.
Now. In the world of cell phones, even in the late 90s, right, the X-Files always had cell phones around. You have to find a way to eliminate the cell phone, to isolate the story. And I think that's important for the interaction between the two of them in the car here.
Right. I mean, the only other way you could do it is if he, dropped it on the top of a train.
That's right. Very good. Very good.
Yes, I know that was his gun. He didn't drop his phone. It was just his gun, right? Was it his gun or his cell phone?
Was that in what, 731? Yeah, I can't remember. But yeah, something falls out of his pocket. I think it is his phone because they keep trying to contact him, right? Because X and Scully can't find him. But he tells him to drive, so we get the title of the episode in here. Take a drink. He also says "shut up and drive" later, so there's at least a couple instances of the episode title being said in episode. I love keeping track of that kind of stuff. We find out from Scully, though, talking to the sheriff's department, law enforcement, that they've contacted all of the local TV to keep it off the air, which I thought was an interesting just line, because since we set it up like there was a car chase earlier and it's on TV, this time it's not going to be on TV. So that kind of helps them do what they need to do without being followed. Because, as Mulder and Crump start talking, Mulder he wanted to talk to him all along, so he's starting to get information. They have to stop behind this U-Haul truck, and Mulder notices that he gets worse as they slow down. So that's got to inform the decisions Mulder makes moving forward.
Do you think that would be a realistic thing, them asking the media to not get involved? Do you think the media would comply with that?
I think some media might comply, but there's always going to be some outliers out there. Like when they have press conferences and they have the caution tape, there's always the ones that are sneaking through.
Yeah.
So, but because it is a small, it was a small town and they're in the middle of nowhere out west, right? They're not like in the middle of a major metropolitan area, so they're kind of probably in between towns at this point. It's probably easier, and they're not like running through streets of people, right? They're in the desert, really. So I'll go with it, but yeah, I did question that as well. So.
Okay, good. I was curious about that.
And Mulder has his line here where he says, "I think I saw this movie," because Branson told him to keep going faster, keep going faster, keep going faster. So, but Scully gets a phone call from Kirsch.
Oh man, Kirsch! I don't like this guy.
Well, he has these assistant directors. They always start out the same, don't they? They're like these stern, mysterious guys. They're hard asses, and you don't know where they stand. There's like this antagonistic relationship with Mulder, and Scully's having to play peacemaker. I like Kirsch though, but he is very similar to Skinner. He's like a black Skinner, right? Because he has the glasses. He has the same kind of mannerisms. Like just the way he treats him. Like he's sitting at Skinner's desk, so of course I think of Skinner, right? But another one
Mulder,
of
though. Like Skinner doesn't hate Mulder, and I don't think Skinner ever hated Mulder. And Kirsch clearly has a hard on for Mulder, and he just hates him.
I don't think that's what you think that means. He has a hard on for Mulder.
He's got a hate on, a hard on, hate on.
But I do enjoy the dynamic here, because he's like, "Hello, Agent Scully. How is Idaho?" It's like, "Consider your next words very carefully." She's like, "All right, well, we're not in Idaho, sir."
That's right, you're not in Idaho. I already know that.
But I like Kirsch. I think that because Skinner, right? He's been torn between cigarette smoking man and helping Mulder all this time. Like that was kind of played out at this point. So I think it was wise to shake things up a little bit by introducing his character. So.
Yeah, I could just picture Kirsch and the smoking man sitting around a table. Man, that frickin' Mulder, always messing around. Man, I hate him. And the smoking man's like, "Oh man, you've got no idea."
It's my son you're talking about. So.
Do we know
But
that?
anyway.
Yeah, we know that. No, we don't know that by this point, do we?
Yes.
Spoilers? No, doesn't that
Yes,
come
you
until
do.
Two Fathers, One Son? That's later this season.
That has been implied for seasons now.
I don't know.
Okay. I'm sure everyone listening to this has seen the revival series, season 10 and 11. So
I don't know what show. Mulder and Scully are clearly a platonic relationship. Clearly.
But anyway, so we
Romo.
No, Romo. I am a Mulder and Scully shipper platonically, but actually the revival kind of made me come around to being a fan of them as a couple. But that's its own conversation for another time.
I never want to podcast with you again.
Well, that's going to be a problem. So we introduce Kirsch here, so we know that we'll wrap back around him at the end. This is just kind of introducing him and kind of adding that other element of, oh, no, not only is this all going on, now I'm in trouble with our boss. Because Scully didn't even want to come here in the first place.
Right.
But she knows Mulder's right. She's like, you know how to pick a Mulder, because she's found herself in the middle of an X-File, despite the FBI's best efforts to remove them from X-Files.
You know how to pick him, Mulder. This one's blowing brains all over my shirt.
And, as Mulder and Crump are in the car here, there comes a point, I was saying that they stop behind this U-Haul, and Mulder Mulder could have left at this point. He could have taken the gun, he could have arrested him, but he saw how distressed Crump was, and this is like, okay, I'm going to earn this guy's trust. I see what the problem is. Mm-hmm. This is the kind of guy Mulder is, right? That's why he works so well in these situations, because he's intuitive, and he's not afraid to kind of break all the rules to get what he wants. So they start going west, because they had traced the route Crump was going earlier with his wife, and like they had turned around, they were going to go one way, they went another, and he realizes, oh, you have to keep going west, okay. And they started this back and forth about names,
Yeah.
because like he's calling him boy, and Mulder's calling him Crump, and he's like, it's Mr. Crump.
You call me by my last name, you use Mr.
Kind of my name's Mulder anyway. You Jewish?
Yes.
It's like, what were they trying to imply there? Like, I don't understand.
That he's just some racist backwater hick, I guess. I don't know. That's what they're trying to do.
Yeah, what if Mulder calls him some peanut-picking bastard?
Yes.
But the name talk is funny. It goes on throughout the rest of their drive, and it's just a funny wrinkle to put into their relationship there. But Scully has theorized that, okay, we need to go to the Crump residence, right? Because they can't figure out how is it spreading. Obviously, Mr. and Mrs. Crump had it, and then another person had it, they found. Mm-hmm. But they were a meter reader. And they were like, oh, what if they read, the electricity and all that? They're like, What if this person read the meter at the Crump's house? So they go to the Crump residence. That's how I knew it was spelled with a C, not a K. And they're wearing their hazmat suits and all that. And there's some bad ADR here, by the way. Like, you hear Gillian Anderson say, okay, we need to do a perimeter sweep, blah, blah, blah. But, like, they start the line, and you're seeing Scully's face, and she's not saying anything. It's only like a second, but it was noticeable.
Yeah.
So just wanted to point that out. But then they have a German Shepherd, and he's barking. I'm like, oh, no, they're going to kill the dog, aren't they?
Kill the dog. And they do it in a very, very effective way because, they don't show you anything. With this one, they just show you the blood splattering across the guy's mask. But it's so effective, and Scully's like, look, I think we're going to see this happen right now, and she's totally into the science of it. Hold the dog down, give him an anesthetic, and boom.
And it is shocking because you're thinking, oh, they're going to get a blood sample, they're going to knock the dog out with drugs, right? But before that can happen, boom, dog's dead, blood all over everybody again.
Bodily fluids, man.
Blood.
Bodily fluids is just gross. Ugh.
So we cut back to the drive, and Mulder starts asking him, "Hey, so what happened here? What's going on?" And he makes a reference to Quincy in MD, the TV show. He's like, "Who do you think I am, Quincy?" But then Crump, he starts going off. I'm like, you FBI figures, because he sees Mulder's ID. He's like, you're the guys who did this to me. I see you out there in the fields. You think I'm just some dumb hick, but I know what's going on. And Mulder always finds himself with these like kindred spirits, right? These conspiracy theorists, because the guy sounds crazy, but to a certain extent, he is right. The government is out there screwing around with all this stuff, and he's vindicated by the investigation that Scully does. And we find out that the government really was, intentionally or unintentionally, I assume this is unintentional, but the side effects of this pulse underground under their property is what caused their madness. So.
Yeah, and this is this is really where it jumps into what's awesome about the X-Files. So they take like a government project or whatever, some type of experiment, and it's gone wrong and has disastrous side effects that were probably not intentioned by the government at all. And this is what I think is one of the things that the X-Files does best, is these type of episodes where there's a project. And that's what I love about it.
Yeah, I mean, those are the things that are most unsettling because you can relate to this stuff.
Yes.
You know?
I
like we were talking about.
I may not be like as much of a conspiracy theorist as my dad is. He's like crazy, but I do believe that there are lots of tests and things going on, and side effects happen from it. I do truly believe that.
It's like The Godfather, right? It's like, now who's being naive, Kay? If you don't think presidents have people being killed, right?
Yeah.
But we get Scully and her hazmat team, and they see that there's a neighbor, right, to the Crump. So like, we're gonna go see what's going on here, because how is it spreading, all this. And so they go to the neighbor's house, and it's real creepy. It's like, it looks abandoned. There's like a TV on. You just see a light, and you see the back of an old lady's head, and you're pretty sure this is going to be like a Norma Bates situation, like Psycho. You're going to turn the chair around. It's going to be an old lady, and no, it's just an old deaf lady. That's why she didn't hear him.
Oh, and when she starts screaming, like I remember the first couple times I watched that, when that old lady starts screaming. Like, it terrifies the crap out of me when she starts screaming, because you don't know what's going on, because you're not expecting that. You're expecting another dead body. So this is another one of the classic scenes in this episode that really brings it to the top for me. And then when you realize that she's deaf, they show you the subtitles are on. And,
so she has the closed caption on her TV, right? And they confirm later that she's deaf.
The way she's talking, too, is kind of the way that deaf people vocalize words. So they give you those couple of clues. And then, as the viewer, you start to click, right? And it's one of those great pieces of evidence. Now, I know it's not a popular episode, but I really like the episode .com, right? And in the episode .com, right, we get that one Russian guy who's fine, right? Because he's drinking the water out of the toilets, right? And so you're like, where's this mystery? Everybody's dying, everybody's getting old, everybody's turning into salt, except for this guy. What's going on here? And, so this is kind of what's going on here. Everybody's dead, their heads are blowing up, except for this lady. What's going on? She's deaf, she can't hear. That's the difference. And I love when they bring those kinds of elements into the X-Files as well. Something realistic, something believable, as not necessarily an antidote, but for, a reason why this person's immune from it.
Yeah, smart storytelling.
Yes.
Right? It's smart storytelling, and even though you are a little bit ahead of Mulder and Scully, you're still finding stuff out with them as well.
You're ahead of them, but not like they are in shapes.
Exactly. Your favorite episode.
No, this is my favorite episode.
I know. So, Mulder is running out of gas. And I think, what does he tell? What does he tell him? He's like, I regret to inform you on the behalf of the Jewish conspiracy of the world that we have a mile left of gas or something like that. Because Crump, they're starting to, bond a little bit, as Mulder is prone to do with these kind of characters. Mm-hmm. And he's like, Mulder, sorry what I said about your name. Can't help who you're born into. And Mulder's like, is that supposed to be an apology?
I can't
He's
drive.
Like, I'm sorry I criticized you for being Jewish. It's not your fault that you're Jewish. I'm like, okay. Thanks, man.
Is he Jewish? I don't think he is Jewish, is he? I don't know.
No, that's what the joke is about. I guess that's what they're going for. This guy, it's a weird name, so he thinks he must be Jewish. Like, I don't know. Mulder? I don't know. Weird. So they're running out of gas, so they have to go to a gas station. And Mulder's car here, some rent car, right? Who can't relate to this? They pull up to the gas station, right? And he parked on the wrong side because he doesn't know what side the gas flap is. So he has to put it back, drag it all around. That was amusing. But it's a race against time here, right? Because he tells Mr. Crump, he's like, hey, I'll make it real quick, just a couple minutes. It's one of these old gas stations. Obviously, they're in the middle of nowhere, so the people behind the counter have to turn on the pump. They're out there laughing, having a good time, not really caring. Tell them, you got to pay before you pump. So they're getting attitude. He's getting attitude from these people at the gas station. So what he does, he takes Crump and he puts him in this other guy's car that's filling up on gas, and they drive off.
Steals the car. Totally steals the car. You know how Mulder could have gotten around that, right? You know how to tell which side of the car the gas tank's on?
Well, there's usually an arrow
Yeah.
on your gas gauge. I don't know. I mean, this is the 90s. Who knows how old this car was? When did they start doing that in vehicles, Brandon?
Long
I
time
don't
ago.
know.
Long time ago.
I didn't start driving until 2003, so what do I know about life, frankly?
Nothing.
But-
That's right.
But Mulder did leave a note
Yes.
for Scully and the law enforcement in the car he had gotten there in, which is very important.
Great reveal, too, right? Because you saw him kind of writing, right, but they didn't really draw attention to it when he was telling them about they were running out of gas. He didn't quite... you didn't see what he was doing. And then the reveal, with it just moving up towards the car and then panning and tilting down into the window, it's a perfect reveal.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Because I'm like, what is it going to be in there? Like, did he forget something really important? But...
Not his cell phone, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah, that's for sure. So we get back to Scully, and she's investigating the area. She takes off her hazmat helmet. Like, what are you doing? She's like, it's fine. She's kind of figured out what's going on because she sees all these dead birds as well, and follows this box. I don't know, it's like a power line to this box, and it's like U.S. government, right? And that's when she realizes like what's all going on here. And law enforcement at this point finds her and gives her the note from Mulder. Mm-hmm. And they call her. They call her and they say, "We found a car. What's up with your partner? He's evading our law," because Mulder a couple times now has known where the police are going to be, and he's evaded them to keep this drive going. And so he's like, "WTF? What's up with your partner?" And she's like, "You need to trust him." So.
Yeah, and it's the guy from earlier. It's the same guy.
Yeah, Captain Van Gelder. Yeah,
Van Gelder that they talked to. Was this before? No, yeah. So this is after as well the evasion, because they had talked earlier that he was evading them when she was still in quarantine, right? Well,
yeah, and she's like, "Well, maybe he knows something we don't."
Yeah.
Right? So yeah. So Mulder and Krupp are in a new car with a presumably full tank of gas. They keep going west, and these cops on motorcycles are coming up behind him. Like, "Whoa, what's going on here?" Right? But then you look in the rearview mirror, and one of the cops on the motorcycle is holding out a cell phone.
Waving it at him.
Waving it at him. So this is to get Mulder back in touch with Scully. They catch each other up. Scully explains to Mulder they found this government box on their property, and then Mulder starts going off on all the things that you had mentioned about all the government experiments with the environment and Project HARP and how it could also be weaponized as like an electrical nerve gas, which I thought was very interesting. The government's always looking for those applications for this technology, right?
Yeah, and there we go. Fits in totally with X-Files. This is totally something Mulder would have researched, he would have read up on through all these years. And the fact that he can just spout this stuff off, right? She just mentions one thing, and he's like, bang, I know exactly what you're talking about. This, and this. And
turns out the solution is going to be something that the Crump's not going to like, but... it's going to keep him alive, so he's down for it. Also, the line that Crump says, he says, "We're running out of west," because they need to keep running west. They're going to hit the coast, and they go by this "Welcome to California" sign because the X-Files is filmed in L.A. now, so
they can show that. Oh man, that solution to this, man, again, and that's one of the things that just it totally. Again, elevates this episode to another level. It's like, we got to stab this thing in your ear. It's going to hurt. We can't make it not hurt, and you're probably going to be deaf. And it's like, oh.
He's like, "I'm going to live, though, right?" It's like, all right, that's what we're going for.
It's like Saw. Yeah. It's like an episode of Saw.
You have to dig through your ear to get a key to save your head from being chopped off or something. But, they can't figure out, like, well, why does it have to be going west and all this? And Scully's like, "Look, I don't know." They're all just figuring this out as they go. But basically, there's just like this electrical pulse in the auditory nerve of your brain or something, and that's what's causing the issue. And if you can go at a high speed a certain direction, it can counteract the vibrations that your skull is getting, and that is what is popping. Your skull is what's exploding. It's terrifying to think about. But yeah, Scully talks him through the whole thing. Mulder talks him through the whole thing, and they keep going west. But Scully pays a visit to this government station to ask him what's up, and apparently he's like, "Well, I thought I had talked to you, explained this before." And she's like, "Oh no, I need this information for my official report for the FCC or whatever." She's just BSing to get the guy to this government officer to talk to her.
Yeah. And
he's like, "We're running a test on our ground conduction radio and blah blah blah." And she's like, "Okay, sure. What would be the side effects of this?" So
I can't tell you.
Yeah, everything's classified.
Classified. Good old classified government projects.
So, unfortunately, no answers there. But Scully had told Mulder that she's going to get on a plane to kind of get ahead of them, so she can meet them like basically at the coast where because they are running out of West. Another fun line that Mulder said to her when they were on the phone there was, she's like, "Well, how you doing, Mulder?" And he's like, "Well, other than a cell phone withdrawal, I also got a pee," which is just funny to think. It's like, well, I don't know how far away they were. I don't know how far they've been driving, but it's been a while. So, but the Scully's there, the doctors are there. They got everything ready with an ambulance. They're at like the Pacific Ocean. Mm-hmm. We see the car drive by, and Scully's like, "Okay, get ready." And the car just keeps driving by. You're like, whoa, that's kind of weird, right? And then Scully runs up to the car, and it's like, oh wait, what's going on here? Like, there's only one person driving, and I don't see the other person. And you see Mulder in the front seat, but unfortunately in the back seat, it's too late for Mr. Crump. His head has exploded just the same as his wife's against the window. Yeah. So we didn't see it happen, but we feel the weight of it because Mulder is just so crushed because they were close. Like, he had not that he was friends with this guy, but they've been through something together. He had told him like, hey, you got to stay alive to prove these guys wrong. That happens to a lot of, unfortunately, the people Mulder encounters over the course of the show. So you're rooting for him at this point, and you're sad that he didn't live. And I thought, watching this episode the first time, I thought, oh, maybe he will live. Maybe because this guy, it could go either way. Right, and I think that's another thing that keeps you hooked, right? Because it's not because he, like you said, Brandon, he hadn't done anything too wrong, he hadn't killed any cops, right? He just stolen a car to help save his wife, so that's a redeemable character. So you're thinking, okay, I don't. It's go either way. He could die, he could live, and I was hurt just like Mulder when he didn't make it.
Yeah, it's a great reveal because you're expecting them to make it because it's a good character, but the reveal of just seeing the blood on the window is like, oh man. And yeah, it definitely put it well. You feel the weight of it for sure.
Mulder slowly takes off his tie and stares out into the ocean, defeated. So it's a heavy moment. So, but an effective moment. And then we cut back to Kirsch, and Kirsch is doing the math on all the all the things that they did about the flights and the cars and the reimbursement for people's cars that Mulder had stolen. So
you realize $500 for that station wagon they stole was to clean up all that blood, right?
That's not coming out. So. Anyway, another classic scene of Mulder button heads with his assistant director Kirsch. Kirsch really does. You're right. Kirsch hates Mulder.
He hates him.
Skinner questioned his methods, but he always respected him as an agent. But Kirsch does not have that respect, and so Mulder's like, all right, are we done here? Are we back to doing the dirty work, right? What's the big doo-doo jobs or
something like that? And Kirsch says, well, you could quit. And
then Mulder walks off, and I'm like, wait, he just quit? But the implication is he didn't quit. But of course, Scully, as she always does, she stays and tries to be the mediator here, be the harmonizer. And she starts to, she explains to Kirsch, we save lives, and because he's like, well, here you are, always apologizing for him. I've noticed that about you. And she's like, I'm not apologizing for anything here, sir. We did good work. They've shut down this project. We have saved lives. And he's like, well, according to them, that was purely coincidental that it had been shut down. So even that's the classic X-Files. Like, even when they get a victory, like, it's taken away from them, right? They get no credit for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%, absolutely. The what Mulder needs to know, though, is that he could take this to HR, because if you got a boss that's making your work so miserable that your only thing to do is to quit, like, that's a type of harassment that you can, you can fight.
Well, I'm sure I'm sure the syndicate has agents at all levels of government, Brandon. So
I don't
even
think
the
Kirsch
HR
works
department.
for the syndicate. You think Kirsch works for the syndicate?
I'm not saying Kirsch does. I'm saying they probably got somebody at HR.
I don't think Kirsch works for the syndicate. I don't think anybody
if Mulder didn't get fired for throwing a punch at Skinner at the end of the third season?
The second season, Anasazi. He was drugged, man. He was drugged. It's not his fault. It's like Data when he kills a bunch of people, when he goes all robot. It's like, well, he went all robot. It's not his fault.
But anyway, that's how the episode ends. They are stuck with the still doing the doo-doo work, as they described in the show. Big pile of doo-doo, something along those lines is what Scully says as she walks out of the office upset, and we end the episode. The X-Files are still closed, and I always respected this about the X-Files. When they closed the X-Files, They didn't just immediately open them the next episode.
Right.
You know? Like, because that's the thing on a lot of TV shows, like this major, earth-shattering, universe-changing, life-changing thing happens in a season finale. And by the end of the first episode, everything is back to normal.
Right.
And so the X-Files, as much as I joke about how they just used to close them all the time, you know, it took time to reopen them and go back to the status quo. So I give them credit there.
It's just a well that they went to a couple of times. Like, I think they only did it twice that they closed the X-Files.
I think they did it 3 times. But I can't.
3?
I think it was 3.
Because, like, we had the first time in season 2, right? And this one at the beginning of season 6. But after that, they just passed it on to other people. But I don't think it was ever closed again.
Yeah, because to be honest, my season 7 and 8 knowledge and 9 knowledge is pretty shaky. Like this is my exit ramp here is around season 6 or 7 for my in-depth X-Files knowledge of the show. But you're right, because
you're not a fan of the show. I thought you were.
Why do you hate the X-Files? Yeah, you're right though. They bring on Doggett, they bring on other people. So perhaps we'll keep an eye on that to see if they close the X-Files one more time before it's all said and done.
Have you seen all the episodes?
No, I have gaps or haven't seen them. Oh, also, hello, it's closed at the beginning of season 10, so there's your 3rd right there. Boom.
Is it?
Vindicated. Just like Mr. Crump, I am vindicated with my conspiracy theory.
I don't remember because I watched season 10 and 11 once, and both those seasons are just trash.
I loved season 11. I loved it. I think it's a great ending for the show. I think most of their episodes were great. Season 10 was a mixed bag, but season 11 made up for it. I was very, very happy with how they returned and wrapped up the show.
Made me think of Star Trek Discovery.
All right, we have some listener feedback from our X-Files Basement X-Cast podcast fan group page on Facebook. Brandon, would you be so kind to read the first comment?
I will. This one comes from Michael Little. It says, one of the truly classic episodes of the Los Angeles years, thanks to Bowman's cinematic direction and a great tight script by Vince Gilligan. Thrilling from beginning to end. I definitely agree.
Bowman's cinematic direction. One of the best directors of the show directed the movie.
Yeah.
So.
Adam Silva says, great performance by Cranston, which, of course, led to Vince casting him on Breaking Bad, as well as Duchovny. They have great chemistry that adds another layer to an already intense episode, and the LA sun isn't a problem here. Yeah, I said that too. Yeah, absolutely. Works very well in this episode. And then
Agreed.
Ashley Jeremy Royer says, I have long been haunted by this question. Is Mulder just holding his tie when he gets out of the vehicle at the Pacific? Is he peeing or both? If he isn't peeing, count that as an X-file unto itself. I don't think I remember that part.
Well, no, that's when he gets out of the car, takes his tie off, and looks out at the ocean. You're right. If he had to pee, that's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm like, all right, excuse me, Scully. Please turn around. Like, I'm going to pee over this cliff into the ocean because I've been holding it for the last 17 hours.
Oh, I thought she was implying that the way he was holding his tie made it look like his penis. And it was like really big looking. That's what I thought.
The X-Files is a family show. This is not Star Trek Picard. All right, this is the X-Files.
That's what I didn't understand what she was saying. I was confused.
Well, thank you guys for the feedback, and I think this is a well-loved episode in the fandom. I know it's your favorite episode. It is one of my most fondly remembered episodes. As we ranked it pretty high, both of us. But I think the general consensus on this one is, oh yeah, Drive. I like that one. Probably in recent years brought up by the fact that Bryan Cranston is in it. That's the great thing about the X-Files, seeing these actors kind of quote unquote before they made it, right? So
like that guy in Deep Throat with the hamburger who made it to Family Guy.
Seth Green.
And Jack Black.
Jack Black. There you go. So anyway, Robert Patrick. No, that was after he made it. So.
Yes.
Anyway, there you go. Thank you for the feedback, and keep those coming on the Facebook page. All right, Brandon, our drive is over. Fortunately, we both made it.
I'm out of gas, man.
Unlike the characters in this episode, both of us made it to the finish line. So if people want to find you out there, Brandon, and talk to you more about the X-Files or anything else online, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Brandon Shea-Mutala. You can find me over on the Fandom Podcast Network with a show called Good Evening, an Alfred Hitchcock podcast, which is all about the Alfred Hitchcock films, and we go through them in chronological order. You can find me over on Trek FM with a show called The Line, which is all about Star Trek Picard. I have a great time over there. And with you, over on the United Federation of Podcast Network, I have a show called Franchise Fatigue, which is all about movies, remakes, and sequels. And I guess I can announce it here. I'm not quite sure when this is going to drop, but I've got a show coming on the Nerd Party Network, a short-run podcast called House of Fincher, where we go over all of David Fincher's films because he's my favorite director, and that is a lot of fun. And we're doing those, releasing up to his movie Mank, which is coming out on Netflix. Zach, where can people find you when you're not holding your head and screaming in agony?
Well, you can find me personally on Twitter at MooreOnZach. That's MooreOnCach. I'm also the host of my own podcast, Always Hold On to Smallville. We talk about each and every episode of that young Superman show. On Twitter, you can find us at Always Smallville with one S. And I'm a co-host of Franchise Fatigue, as Brandon said. Find us over at UFP Earth. So if you like this vibe, this back and forth, if you want to have this drive last even longer in the car with me and Brandon, go find us on Twitter over there. All right, everybody. Well, that's going to close this file. But remember, trust no one.
Hey, Zach, More on Zach, is that like a Jewish Twitter handle?
It's none of your business, you peanut-picking bastard.
Elsewhere on We Made This. Pick a disc.
And I bought Riot first, and I was like, oh, I really like this. And then I went back and bought their first album, which I can't think of the name of the first one right now. But I listened to Riot more than I did the first one for sure. Yes, I recently found my old iPod, and you know how it used to, there's a section under settings that would tell you your most listened to songs. This was the top, like however many tracks it is, like 14 slots. And then it was everything else I listened to.
Right in the childhood.
Robin, the hooded man, do. Mate, before we do anything else, that soundtrack.
Yeah, you're a big fan of it, weren't you? Digging it. I could see the admiration for it in your little twinkle in your eyelids.
Oh, it twinkle, it put a tear. It's beautiful, beautiful music by a band called Clannad, who obviously played that kind of music generally. Yeah. And it won a BAFTA.
Oh, okay.
That's because it deserved it.
Yeah. You know what? It definitely fit the aesthetic to the shows.
Cinemortuary podcast.
Yeah, I want to say, and I don't like say this lightly, but this might be my favourite 2 minutes of any film we've reviewed on the podcast so far.
Yeah, it's pretty fucking wild. It is pretty wild.
Sure. If I was given the director's chair and $5 million, this is the sort of thing I'd do.
You'd do that for 90 minutes.
Yeah,
it's with the roulette wheel
just
again,
non-stop.
What if he vomits? What if he vomits playing cards? Beautiful.
Check out all of these shows and more on the We Made This podcast network. The Xcast and X-Files podcast was created by Tony Black and is produced and hosted by Carl Sweeney, Sarah Blair and Kurt North.
You can find the podcast on Twitter at the X_cast, on Facebook by typing in the Xcast, and in our group, X-Files Basement, the Xcast podcast fan group, and on Instagram at the Xcast pod.
Don't forget, you can support the show by becoming a member on Patreon. Our patrons get early access to episodes, behind-the-scenes chats with our hosts and a thriving community of X-Files, and other premium interviews and specials. To find out more and subscribe, you can go to patreon.com/thexcast. That's patreon.com/thexcast.
We are also part of the We Made This podcast network, full of popular culture shows, including our Millennium series, The Time Is Now. You can find all of our shows at our website, wemadethispod.com, or via Twitter at wemadethispod.
Thanks for listening and keep watching the skies.